Broadcasting from the Allen B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation at Nova Southeastern University. Welcome to Sunshine Startups Live, featuring rockstar entrepreneurs, bright ideas, and experts on the startup ecosystem. And now your hosts of Sunshine Startups Live, Jim Ryan and John Wensveen.
Hi, and welcome to another great edition of Sunshine Startups Live. I'm your host, entrepreneur, investor, and startup enthusiast, Jim Ryan, joined by my good Canadian friend, John Wensveen, who's Chief Innovation Officer and Director of the Levan Center of Innovation here at Nova Southeastern University. And John, so great to be with you again, my friend.
Good day, Jim. It's glad to be with you. Now I feel like I need to do the outs and the boots as a Canadian. Well, welcome to the world's first theme park for entrepreneurs. I'm John Wensveen, the Chief Innovation Officer here at Nova Southeastern University and Executive Director of the Allen B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation, where we support the founder's journey from birth of an idea through successful exit or global expansion. And I cannot tell you how excited I am, because not only do we have, I say, a legend in the making, one of my very close friends, Lil, and somebody that I greatly respect, who is busting the barriers for women in leadership positions. And I am so excited about where this conversation is going to go.
Yeah, and that's well said. And so the purpose of Sunshine Startups Live, and of course, we'd like you to share, like, and subscribe if you love the content on the show. But we talk about startups, those that are fostering the ecosystem, successful executives in leadership capacities. And if you haven't heard of Lil Roberts, I'd be surprised, especially if you're watching this podcast, because Lil has been at the epicenter for a lot of the activity, involved on the venture capital side as a successful entrepreneur, and then building an incredible company. Lil Roberts, thank you so much, from Xendoo, which I love that name, by the way. It's just a beautiful name. Thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today.
Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. It's an honor to be here with you, and thank you, John. You inspire me. You are amazing and incredible, and I love what you're doing, Jim. This is incredible to bring this content and information to people that are looking to start their journeys.
You know what's funny? Before we begin, before I knew Lil, I had seen Lil on national television on a show that she was on, and maybe we'll talk about it in this podcast. Not putting two and two together until many months later, but we got a national TV star with us today too.
Well, we've got to make sure before we exit we get the autographs, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Right.
I got a tattoo on my arm. She did it. Yeah.
You went the extra mile on that one.
That's right.
So the CNBC The Job interview, actually, that's an interesting story about how it came about.
Well, we're going to hear that and a lot more. So we kind of bifurcate this show a little bit. Want to hear the Lil Roberts story, and then Xendoo, and then John. We joke about passing along a Rubik's Cube type question, not necessarily to stump you, but really kind of go to kind of pick your brain a little bit about and talk about the future, maybe of the market and so forth. So, with that said, what is the minute and a half story or so about Lil Roberts? Did you grow up here in Florida? Where did you go to school? And kind of we'll work our way up towards into Xendoo then.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I'll share it because for those that are out there that maybe haven't had the opportunity to go to college, I'm not college educated. I grew up in South Florida and grew up very poor in South Florida, a family of 5 kids, and my dad died when I was 10 years old. And I also lost a few of my other siblings. And I was the first one to live past 24, and I was 4th in line. And so the way that I look at the world is that I think that for most people, a third of your life is really, really good, a third is really, really bad, and a third is just so-so. And I'm in the really, really good part of my life. And so I think that we all go through different journeys at different times through it. And I feel very blessed to have the opportunities that I've had in life, because I think everything really prepares you for the next step. And I think that when you're building startups, it can be grueling. And so you need to have a bit of scrappiness about yourself for that.
For sure.
So I didn't know that part of you. I knew Miami and growing up, but I did not know about the siblings. So I even look at you in another light now, and you're already up here in my world. So as you know, here at the Levan Center, we support the founder's journey, and you've been very instrumental in helping being a program facilitator and helping entrepreneurs, particularly the early stage ones, getting to the next level. And your journey is extremely exciting, and people learn off of what you're doing. And I just really want to throw it out there that there's a growing ecosystem around entrepreneurship, and the barriers of entry in many ways are coming down. And I would say that we're democratizing the world for entrepreneurs at different stages. So based on the journey that you've been on, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that journey and then how that led to how you got to Xendoo and where it is.
100%. So what I like to share with people is that your whole life up until yesterday informs what you're going to do today and tomorrow. And it's been that way for me as well. So I went to a technical school and I came out and I went to work for NCR. So I was installing ATM machines, installed the very first ATM machine on Sheridan Street in Publix, the first one that was in Publix. And then from there, from working at NCR in engineering, I went into sales. And then from sales, I went to straight commission. So here I had an engineering job. It was paying really well. This is in the 80s. And I went to straight sales, commission only, lived on credit cards for 6 months. And I sold copiers and fax machines. And then going through that journey, I then started my first business. And my first business was a systems integration company. And that business was selling turnkey desktop publishing at the leading edge of an industry that was moving from the traditional typesetting and paste up to desktop publishing. And so when I look back, I'm like, you know what? I've always been on the leading edge of technology and just was able to ride all the various parts of technology, much like that you have done, Jim, right? And so from there, I just went into multiple different businesses. And this is the first business that was intentional. I've had about 8 businesses prior, and the businesses that I've had have been anywhere from systems integration to a product business, selling a product, to manufacturing businesses. And what I'm doing with Xendoo is we are applying manufacturing principles through technology to a time-based industry to increase productivity and to bring the transparency to the business owners, because I love small businesses and I'm super passionate about them.
It's a great niche you found, and obviously supporting the SMB market. Obviously, it's a broad market and so forth. Take a step back a little bit, though, because I don't want you to be shy, because you've won, and obviously the Emerge conference back in 2018,
Yes.
and then from there, obviously wildly successful. The Rise of the Rest, Steve Case,
Yes.
Jason Calcanis is the syndicate. Locally here, Deep Work Capital out of Orlando, got some funding there, raised bucket loads of dollars, millions of dollars, and so forth. When at a time, especially around 2018 and so, not a lot of checks were being written and so forth. You talked earlier about your background and so forth. Where did sort of that grit and roll up your sleeves and that moxie, where does that come from?
You're born with it, right? You're born with it. I believe you're born with it. I think that from my lived experience as a child, I had a choice to, pick myself up and figure out what I was going to do, or you can just become a victim. And so I think for people, you have a choice every day. And if you maybe from things that have happened in your life, you analyze and have some self-awareness and say, oh, I have victim mentality, just switch it, just change. And if you believe in yourself, all things are possible. And if you believe in others, all things are possible. And so for me, I always want to climb the highest mountain. And, that can be good and bad, but I always want to climb the highest mountain. And so all the people that I surround myself with are those types of mindsets that they want to climb the highest mountain. Like, well, okay, just because you did something and you were good at it, what can you do next? How can you challenge yourself? I'm a lifelong learner, and intentionally, I wanted to have a VC-backed company, and I'll share that with you. What had happened was after I exited my last business, and for me, Jim, I love to build teams. I love to impact people's lives, and I think that probably comes from my childhood and the life that I lived early on. And so when I exited my last business, I said, I looked back and I said, all of my businesses, and ironically, they've all been in different industries. Usually entrepreneurs will pick one vein and stay in that vein, right? But John, you've done so many different things as well. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I did a scorecard, and it's a scorecard that I've used with many of my entrepreneur friends when they have an inflection point, and I'm eventually going to put it to an ebook on Amazon. But I did the scorecard on myself, and on my scorecard, because if you don't do a scorecard, everything looks good, right? And so I'm really big about scorecards. So I put together the scorecard, and on my scorecard, it said that I'm hugely passionate about small businesses. So I knew that my next endeavor was going to be around small business and to impact small business. I love technology, so I knew that I was looking for an analog industry that I could reshape the industry. And so I needed something that was analog. I knew that it needed to be the right time because I had watched in my career things that have come out and companies that were launched that it was just the wrong timing, and those founders missed out. 10 years later was the right time, and it became wildly successful. And then I said, I want to grow a company to 100 million ARR, and not for money. You know, there's a big difference, I believe, between entrepreneurs and people that just want to have a business. Entrepreneurs do things because they want to create. And when you're creating, you're not worrying about making money. Of course, you know, that type of success follows, right? But if you do it because you want the money, I feel that's the wrong reason. And from, you know, the majority of my friends are entrepreneurs. They're all creators. And so I had on my scorecard, 100 million ARR, technology-based, help small businesses and impact small business owners, and reshape an industry. And I said, what will stretch me as a human? I said, let's go have a VC-backed company, because all my other companies I'd built on my money and the bank's money. And wow, you know from being on the other side of the table in the VC world that it's hard. It's really hard.
So I like what you said, and I believe it, too, that you're born with it. And yes, you can teach people to do certain things, but if there's something in the DNA, and I know you have it, I think all three of us around this table have it. What was interesting, just recently, I was moderating a fireside chat with somebody. His name is Bob Chapman, and he's known throughout the world for his new type of leadership that he's been reinforcing for years. And he defined the difference between a manager and a leader. And he said managers are people that manipulate other people for their own self-best interest so that they can climb the ladder, versus a leader that cares for their people and grooms them and grows them into the next level of whatever that might be. So it's about caring for your people. And he says some things I agreed with, and some things that that doesn't really work in the business world, in reality, especially in a startup environment. But I get the message. So you've been successful. You've done multiple things throughout your life. And by the way, Lil is I'll call her an extreme adventurer in addition to an entrepreneur. One minute she's in the right seat of an Embraer Phenom airplane, and the next minute she's in Estonia. The next minute she's been in 5 different cities or countries. You never know, like where's Waldo, where's Lil? She's all over the place, changing the world. So where I'm going with all of this is, if you think about the success of your track record and the and exits and building, what has been the secret to your success, and how do you get the people that you work with to become part of that success, which can often be a very challenging thing?
That's a great question. And it's changing. The way that you did that 5 years ago, 10 years ago is different than the way that you do it today. It starts with the core of the human, for me. I mean, everybody's going to have a different opinion about it, and I'm very interested to hear you guys' opinion, especially, Jim, you have 2,000 team members. So it'd be interesting to hear how you guys do that. But for me, it starts with the human. So we look for heart-led people that run into burning buildings. And you can tell if somebody is heart-led and they run into burning buildings based on the questions that you ask them when you're interviewing, and that could be a whole separate section that we chat about in regards to that. And then once you have them, and you want them to be lifelong learners. And so if they're not a lifelong learner, I don't want them on my team. And the reason being, especially in a startup culture, is it's always changing. And so you want people to be with you that have a zest for learning. And when they have a zest for learning, that means that they're open to change, and that at the core, they're a heart-led person who will run into the burning building. When you are willing to run into a burning building, you have natural leadership within you.
I can't agree with that more. And I'm sitting here analyzing all my different environments that I've ever been in. How many people would? I can see the ones running away more than the ones I can see running in. And the lifelong learning, extremely important too. That's amazing.
So Xendoo's obviously had great traction, got some venture capital. building a team today. How large is the team? You were talking about that earlier. How much of the business is scaled from an employee size?
So we are 42 people stateside and another 16 members in Estonia.
So, and over 1,000 customers
Yes.
at this stage. And then, so how do you, as you're growing the business, talk about, how are you getting customers? How are you looking to scale, move Xendoo into that? Because you said early on, we want to be a $100 million company. What's that sort of trajectory look like for you today? And what many would consider would be a terrible economy right now, very tough on labor, very tough on cash. What does Xendoo look like right now?
So tough economy excites me.
Good.
I love that. And so you need a tough economy because you know what? It clears the field. And so I love when things are tough. COVID, we grew 30%.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. We didn't stick our head in the sand. We said, okay, this is happening, but let's grow, let's help our customers, and let's look for the people that are growing, and let's go help them too. My goal, my personal goal in BHAG is 15,000 customers. So for me, Xendoo is going to be a national and maybe one day a global brand. We do have customers in 13 countries, but they have a US-based business, and so that's why they're using us, and we have customers in 48 states. And, when you're in a startup, the mindset needs to be get the first customer, then get 10, then get 100, then get 1,000, and then get 10,000, right? And so we're on that journey now that how do we take the 1,000 customers we have and how do we make sure that all the systems and processes are there to head to 10,000 customers. And we're on track. To get to 15,000 customers, realistically, will probably take maybe 8 to 10 more years to get there. But we're growing at a great rate. We're growing 40% year over year. And that's it's something that we're tremendously grateful for.
So let's take a sidestep and talk about the ecosystem around innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship, and look at South Florida, and maybe we can expand it beyond that. You've been rooted here. You could go anywhere to start, scale a business, exit a business. So there must be some kind of magnet that keeps you here in South Florida. And so what is that? And how do you see the ecosystem around us evolving as you see it right now?
Oh, it's super exciting. I mean, what a time for South Florida the past couple of years. And the Levan Center, you, John, have been one of the key players to drive that along with Melissa Medina. I like to say that all roads lead to Melissa. We won Emerge in 2018, and that was a tremendous honor and really was the beginning of our journey. So for me, South Florida is about that you have 100 countries that are represented in South Florida's ecosystem. And when you have diversity, you have an advantage because when you have 100 different countries, they solve problems differently. And our team is full of diversity and they bring different solutions to the problems. And where else are you going to find that? Where in the United States do you have the diversity of South Florida, along with our incredible weather and just the beauty that we have, quality of life?
So as you talk about the ecosystem, obviously the Levan Center here and the work that John's doing, when you started, not much around, right? Even if you go back, 5-10 years, maybe a small incubator someplace in the state, but not much. You were able to sort of penetrate and almost, I'm going to quote, rise above the rest, if you will.
Thank you.
How, if you can compare then versus now, and if you're looking at the founders, they've got it easier today, I would assume in some ways, and in some ways not. How would you kind of compare the market then when you started versus the market now for founders?
Yes. So when I started, resources weren't there. There was a lack of community, right? Because everybody needs community, no matter what stage you are or where your mindset is, you need community. So we didn't have community. There wasn't, a book like today. There's lots of great books out. We were just published in a book from a dear friend of mine, Colin Campbell, Start, Scale, Exit, and Repeat. And so that's, 400-page book. That's a handbook of how to start a business and what to do as a startup. And so there's a lot more resources in that way. So yes, it made it a little more difficult and you had to find your way. Today, one would say it's easier. I would say probably it's a little harder because there's more noise. And the founders...
In what way? So when you say noise, describe what do you think that noise is?
So noise comes in a couple of areas. So one is distractions. So if a founder is out there just attending all the events that they can attend, they're not focusing on their business and they're not focusing on the problem that they want to solve. So there's noise of time. Then there's noise of mindset, right? Because they're second guessing themselves. They're not as focused on how do they go about scaling this company. There's more competition for team members. There's more competition that when you go to talk to the investors have a bigger selection in the South Florida market. During the time that we raised, nobody wanted to invest in South Florida. So when you went to SF, I was out in SF with Jason Calacanis' program, and when you're out there and you say to them, you're from South Florida, they say, "Are you moving?" No, and we didn't have the talent. A lot of the talent wasn't here that understands how to scale a startup. It's painful. Like, you know what? But you have to love that pain. I love that pain. It's very painful. You've seen, right? How painful, John?
Painful.
It's painful.
I got bruises all over me.
Right. The Levan Center is a startup.
Still keep coming.
It's a startup. Exactly. And you have to, and this is what I tell fellow founders. I say that you have to get up in the morning and you have to want to have your guts kicked in every day because that's what happens. And if you thrive in that, then you're in the right spot.
I love getting my guts kicked out. It's great.
That's how you grow.
I heard something the other day, like, everybody's talking about TGI Friday. It should be TGI Monday. Thank goodness it's Monday, right? I'm going back and
change the paradigm,
change the world.
right? Sure.
But when you talk about noise, there's something that got me thinking too, and I'm curious as I talk to men and I talk to women that are going through the fundraising, and I'm finding different results depending on man, woman. Is it more challenging or is it equal as a woman raising money in today's environment?
Trick question, guys. Not fair. Not fair. I can't win with that question.
That's the Rubik's Cube.
Yes. No, you got to give me something harder than that. I like a challenge. But and I'm a very direct person. So you have to understand and like people to be direct. What I say is, look, if I'm overweight and ugly, I can lose the weight but can't change the looks. Just let me know where I stand. So, the straight answer of it is absolutely it's harder to raise money if you're a female. I don't look for sympathy. When I was out raising money and other female founders would take the victim mentality of it or go, and have a little bit of defeatist, I'm like, get out of your own way and don't even focus on that. Just go do the best that you can and you're going to find the right investor that will invest in you. And, yes, are there VCs that will invest in a guy that has an idea and not even traction or even a company or an MVP and they'll just give him money? Absolutely, that'll happen. Not so much for a female will that happen. I do think that there's a paradigm shift happening, and because people relate to people that are like them. So a lot of the VCs did not have females that were in leadership roles in that industry. Now that we do, it changes that. And it takes having hardcore females that are willing to do whatever it takes to build a company and to prove it for you to change that, right? So guys are going to pick guys on sports teams, right? Even though their females can play football now, right, in schools, they're going to naturally migrate because they feel a likeness. So for whatever the reason is, it is harder. I don't care. I actually welcome it. When we applied for Emerge, somebody said there was no way we were going to win. Those are fighting words. So for those listening to this podcast, and I think this is amazing that you bring this to founders. So thank you both for doing this because it's important for them to to know that they're not alone and that, hey, you're walking into something that's going to be hard. So buck up and go at it. If you want to be a founder and you want to build a company that's going to change the world, then, just prepare to go into battle and go into battle every day. And don't worry about what battle you're going to fight. Just know you're going to fight battles.
We've said it numerous times before, find your tribe, right? The people that walk through the fire with you. And one of the things I really admire about Lil, and it's a rarity, is that you know where you stand. She is very straightforward. It's not, you don't know where you stand. And I think that's great advice too, is stick to your guns and be very black and white about where you go. And that's one thing that I think that really stands out with you, and is something that I admire as a leadership skill, something that should be passed on to others.
Yeah, I want to tee up on John's point there, because, obviously you have sort of an alpha personality, right? You said, this is where Lil stands here and so forth. A lot of founders, in my experience, when they're pitching and they're getting feedback from venture capitalists, they'll tend to, sure, we could do that. You want us to be now the Uber of this? Oh, I could do that. And so they'll tend to sway and flex so they can get the check. How did you sort of balance that early on, coming out of Emerge, and sort of saying, this is where the company is going, this is what the company does, and sort of this is the mantra of my leadership and how we're going to take it to the next level? So how did you do that in coordinating, communicating with all the venture capitalists that you had a chance to meet with?
And I had an opportunity to meet with a lot of, we pitched at Sequoia. As part of Jason's
huge
program.
firm,
yeah, which was amazing. For me, I like to watch signals, right? I'm very observant, and so I like signals. And so what I see is that venture capital, they want people that are focused and that are going to get the end result. And if they see you, wax and wane, they're not going to invest in you. It's, who's going to invest in somebody who wax and wanes? It's going to be angel investors, because angel investors aren't as sophisticated, correct? And so they're going to be hopeful, right? But venture capital wants to know that you have a clear focus and that you're succinct, and that you can, that you show that you can accomplish and get it done. And so it's part of my nature, good or bad. It's part of my nature to be direct. And if a venture capital said to me, well, we think you should do this, this, and this, they're the wrong venture capital for our business.
Well said.
I think we've said it on other shows before that sometimes there's a combination. You need the right people, the right money, and the right plan. If one of those is wrong, then you could be doomed for failure if you can't correct yourself. And going back to you being very direct, one thing I also like about Lil is that when you're judging a pitch competition, you are straight and to the point, and you shoot holes through the entrepreneur for the right reasons so that they are stronger at the end of the day, versus others that, oh, what a great presentation. That was just wonderful, like making you feel really good instead of giving the reality and the sense of life. So we know that we have different types of entrepreneurs at different stages that are listening, watching to what we're doing here today. What's the one piece of advice that you would give an early stage entrepreneur, no matter what sector they're in, that they need to take away from today that will lead them to their success?
The one piece that I would say, there's a lot of things running through my mind. When you're starting out, and what I did with Xendoo, is I said, what would be the one reason that this would fail? So drill down to your essential question. Everybody does their startup for different reasons, and through having the opportunity to work with the Levan Center with a lot of the amazing founders that are coming through here. Well, number one, know your why. If you don't know your why, you'll never succeed, because if you don't, when times get tough, if you don't know your why, you're not going to get through. And then before you put any money into what you believe is this amazing idea that's going to change the world, go to the end result and say, why, when I look back and it didn't work, what do I think the reasons were that it didn't work, and flesh them out before you go forward. And
it's great advice. And we talk about, getting nuggets out of people for our founders that are listening, startups, entrepreneurs that are going, hey, how do I do this? Maybe I want to be the next Lil Roberts, and so forth. What is if you look at it from a market standpoint, we're geo-focused, talking about the state of Florida, South Florida, and a lot of the activity here. What do you think the market needs to do to produce more Lil Roberts?
Education. The education system, I believe, if I was 20 years younger, I think my next startup, and I already have my next two that I want to do, but we'll see.
I love
depending,
it. You'll talk to John and I about your ideas, won't you?
Who says we're not? Wait.
I think education is the key to the future of the world. As I mentioned, if I had 20 years prior, I would turn education on its head. Technology has affected, and I'm super passionate about this, guys, so interrupt me if I go on too long with it. But what I'll share is that people growing up today have grown up in a digital world, and they lost the basics of so many things. They lost the basics of second order thinking. They do not have critical thinking. And we need to go back to, one, empowering parents to recognize it so that they teach their children critical thinking from a very early age, because if not, they're not going to have a place in the world with AI. And we need to teach kids in school around critical thinking. We teach children for tests. So wrong. We need to teach people how to think. When we teach them how to think, the opportunities are amazing.
I vote for her for Department of Education.
100%. I totally agree. And I think, and you're absolutely correct. There's this huge disconnect globally in the whole, not just higher ed, education period, starting in preschool all the way through specialty graduate school, where I think industry has dictated to academia, but not listened on the other side, or education, academic units have dictated to industry what they think their needs are versus listening. And there's a need for strategic co-invested partnerships that really aren't occurring at the level. And I get a little upset when I hear, because we got great academic institutions in South Florida, but there is a disconnect with what industry and emerging trends are. And you keep bringing up AI, which is extremely important because we're only at the foothills of what AI is. I don't think we even understand it enough to know where the future is going. But that leads me into my next question. And I know we're getting short on time. But if you looked into the crystal ball and said 5 years from now, this is what the world's going to look like, and this is where Lil Roberts fits into that world.
Huh. All right. The first part's easier than
by the way,
second.
that's another Rubik's question. You're on too.
Yeah, look at that. He's
comes in
on.
threes.
There you go. All right. Look, I love it. Bring it. You know,
She
you
likes
can peel,
challenge,
that's right. You can
right?
peel my skin off. I'm going to stay going. Right. That's
This is
it.
the real deal here.
So the world in 5 years is going to be so different beyond what people can even imagine. They don't even realize it's happening. I was at a CEO AI event that the gentleman teaching it has a company of 5,000 team members, and his goal is to do 50 of these AI at 100 CEOs in each one, so the CEOs go back and can inform their communities and inform their teams. And he said that what we're in is in 7 years will be the golden age of humanity, because AI will solve cancer, AI will solve the clean water, will solve food, it will solve for all of this. But the path to get there is going to be extremely painful. And we're already starting to see it. We were hiring a couple of marketing positions in our company, and we go out and we hunt on Indeed. So not only will we post a position, but we go out and we actively hunt. And so I was with my team member who's our recruiter, and we were looking at it, and for marketing, within 15 miles was just under 5,000 people that had updated their resume in the last 30 days. Wow. Now, that's because AI is hitting that industry, right? Mm-hmm. My neighbor told me, same thing for HR, that it's hitting that industry. So we're in interesting times, but you know, when you think about it, that there's been interesting times like this long before, mm-hmm. right? And we've always make it through. So for me, I'm very excited about it. I think it's a fascinating time to be alive. I think that what we're going to see in our lifetime is going to be absolutely amazing. What concerns me is the critical thinking of the population that grew up in a completely digital world. Ask anybody that's grown up in a completely digital world, which is probably 30 years old and younger, if they know 5 people's phone numbers by heart. Probably not. I was at a store, and I still like to use old-fashioned green money sometimes, as well as an Amex, because I think credit is taking our people, the wrong path, right? To be able to understand and balance your budget. And I handed the person at the checkout $20 and a penny because the bill was $8.96. The person who was about 20 years old, a female, said to me, "What's the penny for?"
Your thoughts?
That's a good one.
I was going to freaking lose my mind. I said, well, that would be so you could give me a nickel back instead of 4 pennies. But when I drove away, when I left the store, I thought to myself, it's not necessarily their fault, right? And so when you think about it, it's actually, can be scary, because what happens to the generation that's coming in when they've only been trained in a digital world, and they believe everything digital, and they don't have the skill set to think for themselves? And so that keeps me up at night.
So bright future, some treacherous waters, critical thinking, and so very inspiring, your story and background. A lot of the founders that are watching today, startups, obviously, as you're an inspirational leader, how do they get a hold of you? And then for potential customers that are interested in signing up with Xendoo, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, thank you, Jim. So Xendoo.com, Xendoo.com, Xendoo.com. We love customers, so please join us or tell your friends about us so that they can join us. And they can just go to Xendoo.com and hit schedule a consult or request a callback, or they could email sales@Xendoo.com. My email is lil.roberts, lil.roberts@Xendoo.com. I may not reply that day. It may take 2 days, but just put in the subject line that you heard us here today. And then that'd be great. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. For founders, educate yourself. Find your tribe. Find a founder group that aligns with who you are. And so what I mean by that is that there are different categories of startups, right? So there are startups that are marketplaces, or you're a tech-enabled SaaS like us, or you're a SaaS, a pure SaaS. And then what genre? Are you a fintech? Are you biotech? What group and category are you in? And find founders in that and have that as your brain trust. And come out to the Levan Center, because you're going to find a tribe here. And just make sure you understand your why and go after it.
I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy and you're doing so much for the state, for the region, in a lot of the activity that in the panelists, supporting startups and so forth. We need more Lil Roberts in the community. And so thank you for being on the podcast, Sunshine Startups Live, today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be here with you guys today.
Thank you, Lil. She's truly one of my heroes, just so you know. Xendoo.com, Xendoo.com.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lil.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Remember to subscribe, like, and share the Sunshine Startups Live podcast, and follow us on social media. If you're interested in sponsoring or appearing on the show, please email us at booking@sunshinestartups.live.